Okay, so you've sent us a whole stack of articles from Kenya, all from October 17th, 2024.
Yeah,
Looks like it was a pretty wild day. We're talking impeachment, international relations, economic policies, you name it.
it was.
Ready to dive in.
Absolutely.
There.
It seems like you want to understand the major political shakeup that happened, specifically the impeachment of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua.
Riggy G, as
Yes.
I've seen him come.
Yeah.
That nickname alone makes me think this isn't your average political story.
Yeah.
But let's back up. What exactly led to Gachagua facing an impeachment trial? This wasn't just a parking ticket, right?
Not even close. The charges against Gachagua were serious, alleging he abused the power of his office. Out of the 11 charges, the most damning, and the ones the Senate ultimately upheld, cut to the core of Kenya's governing structure.
Okay, so break it down for me. What were these charges and why were they such a big deal?
Imagine someone chipping away at the very foundation of a house. That's what these charges boiled down to. Accusations of undermining the judiciary, disrespecting the Constitution, and even compromising national intelligence. These weren't just political disagreements. They struck at the heart of how Kenya operates.
And just so we're crystal clear, impeachment in Kenya means he's actually removed from office, right?
It's a crucial step towards removal, but it's not the final word.
Hmm.
The Senate vote on the impeachment charges is like a grand jury indictment.
Okay.
If they find enough evidence of wrongdoing, they vote to impeach, which then triggers another process to decide on actual removal from office.
Got it. So high stakes, but not a done deal at this point. What was the atmosphere like during this impeachment trial?
Imagine a pressure cooker that was the Kenyan Senate. Heated debates, accusations flying back and forth, and to top it all off, Gachagua's legal team pulled a move straight out of courtroom drama.
Okay, now I have to know what happened.
Picture this. Day 2 of the trial, things are getting intense.
Yes.
Gachagua's about to be cross-examined, and suddenly he's hospitalized. Intense chest pains, they said.
Talk about convenient timing. Did anyone buy it?
Let's just say there was skepticism. The National Assembly's legal team even demanded proof of hospitalization. But despite the controversy, Gachagua's lawyers, led by Paul Mute, tried to use this to their advantage.
What did they do?
They tried to slam on the brakes, demanding a postponement of the trial until October 22nd, citing his health. But the Senate wasn't having it. They decided the trial must go on, which did not sit well with Gachagua's team.
Oh, I bet. What happened next? Did they just accept the Senate's decision?
Except, let's just say they weren't too happy about it. They staged a dramatic walkout, claiming they couldn't continue without direct instructions from their client.
Wow. Talk about high-stakes drama.
Yeah.
So the trial continued without Gachagua's defense team. That seems like a pretty big disadvantage.
It certainly didn't help his case. And what makes this whole situation even more fascinating is that Gachagua had already been trying to fight off this impeachment threat long before the trial even began.
Oh, how so?
He'd been waging a fierce legal battle, filing a staggering 26 court petitions, attempting to stop the impeachment process in its tracks.
26. That's persistence. What were his arguments in those petitions?
His legal team argued that the impeachment process was flawed, biased, and politically motivated. They were essentially trying to get the courts to intervene and put a stop to it.
So did any of these attempts to halt the impeachment through the courts work?
Not a single one. The courts, under Chief Justice Martha Koome, consistently ruled that they couldn't interfere in what they deemed a parliamentary matter. They essentially said, this is the legislature's playing field, not ours.
Okay, so the courts were respecting the separation of powers, but even if they wouldn't stop the process altogether, did they at least address any of Gachagua's concerns about bias or unfair practices?
They did acknowledge the serious legal issues raised by Gachagua's case, hinting that they might revisit those issues once the impeachment proceedings concluded. They were essentially leaving the door open for a potential legal showdown down the line.
So not a complete dead end for Gachagua's legal team even after the Senate's decision.
Exactly. They made it clear they planned to challenge the impeachment in court, arguing the entire process had been tainted. But while all this was playing out in the legal and political spheres, things were also heating up on the streets.
You mean the public's reaction to the impeachment?
Absolutely. There was a significant outcry in support of Gachagua, especially in Kirinyaga County.
What was happening there?
Imagine this, throngs of people flooding the streets, their voices echoing with chants of "Free Riggy G." They were protesting the impeachment, demanding his reinstatement, even blocking roads. It was a powerful display of public support for Gachagua, fueled by a mix of loyalty and distrust of the impeachment process.
It sounds like a powder keg of emotions.
And amidst the chaos and uncertainty, the rumor mill started churning who might replace Gachagua if he was removed from office. One name kept popping up: Governor Anne Waiguru.
Interesting. Why Guru? What made her a potential contender?
Well, she's a prominent figure in Kenyan politics. Governor of Kirinyaga County since 2017, and previously served as Cabinet Secretary for Devolution and Planning. She's a seasoned politician with experience in high-level government positions. Many saw her as a natural fit for the role.
So while the Gachagua drama was unfolding, there were already whispers of a potential power shift on the horizon. But, amidst all this political intrigue, it's easy to forget that other major events were happening in Kenya that day.
That's the thing about any given day in a nation. The world keeps spinning. The news cycle doesn't stop for a single story, no matter how big.
Exactly. So what else was grabbing headlines in Kenya on October 17th, 2024?
Well, remember the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas that we touched upon earlier?
How could we forget? It was a major international crisis.
And it was directly impacting Kenya. Thousands of Kenyans were stranded in Lebanon because of the war. Their lives disrupted, their safety at risk.
That's right. I remember reading about the government's efforts to evacuate them. What was the latest on that front?
On October 17th, plans were announced to bring over 7,000 Kenyans home from Lebanon. But here's where things get even more complicated. They were looking at evacuating them by sea.
By sea. That seems logistically complex and potentially risky. Why not just fly them out?
With the ongoing conflict, air travel in and out of Lebanon was a nightmare. Imagine stringent clearance requirements from Lebanese authorities, limited flight options, and thousands of people desperately trying to get out. It was absolute chaos. The government was facing a logistical puzzle, even considering evacuating people to a nearby peaceful country by sea first, and then flying them back to Kenya from there.
Wow, talk about a logistical nightmare. It really puts things in perspective. While the Gachagua impeachment was dominating headlines at home, the government was simultaneously dealing with an international crisis trying to bring thousands of its citizens to safety.
It highlights the complex and multifaceted challenges the governments face, often having to juggle multiple crises and priorities at once.
It's a stark reminder that even on a day as politically charged as October 17th, life in all its complexity goes on. Were there any other significant developments happening within Kenya that day?
There were. In addition to addressing the crisis in Lebanon, the government also made some noteworthy announcements regarding domestic issues. President Ruto announced plans to tackle the housing shortage in Kenya, pushing forward with the affordable housing program.
Okay, so tell me more about this housing program. What's the strategy there?
The government's plan centers around constructing thousands of new affordable housing units, particularly focusing on densely populated informal settlements like Mukuru kwa Njenga and Kibra in Nairobi.
It sounds like they're trying to address a critical need, making sure that safe and affordable housing is accessible to more Kenyans.
Exactly. And in a similar vein, President Ruto also revealed plans to hire a massive number of teachers, 20,000 to be precise, in January of 2025.
Wow, 20,000 new teachers. That's a huge investment in education. What's the reasoning behind such a large-scale hiring initiative?
It's a multi-pronged approach, really. By significantly increasing the number of teachers, they're aiming to improve the overall quality of education in Kenya. This move would help address issues like overcrowded classrooms and inadequate teacher-to-student ratios, particularly in underserved rural areas.
So it sounds like amidst the political drama and international crises, there were also glimmers of hope and progress in Kenya on October 17th.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing on the domestic front either. Remember the Adani group we discussed earlier, that Indian conglomerates involved in infrastructure projects in Kenya?
Yeah, vaguely. What was the latest with them?
Well, their presence in Kenya had stirred up quite a controversy. There were growing concerns about a lack of transparency in their dealings and potential implications for Kenya.
Okay, so unpack that for me. What were people concerned about specifically?
There were accusations of shady business practices and concerns that the deal struck with Adani hadn't been entirely above board. Some worried about potential corruption and whether these projects would truly benefit Kenya in the long run.
So alongside the very visible political drama and the humanitarian crisis unfolding overseas, there were also these simmering tensions over economic policies and corporate influence.
Precisely. It paints a vivid picture of just how much was happening in Kenya on October 17th, 2024. From the halls of parliament to the streets of Nairobi and the shores of Lebanon, it was a day of high-stakes, difficult decisions, and glimpses of hope for the future.
It's been quite a journey unpacking all of this with you. I feel like I've gotten a crash course in Kenyan current events, and frankly, I'm left with more questions than answers.
And that's the beauty of a deep dive like this. It's not about presenting easy answers, but about providing context, sparking curiosity, and encouraging further exploration.
Well said. So to our listener, we leave you with this thought. As Kenya navigates these complex challenges and opportunities, how will they define their future on the global stage?